Hi, I'm Terry Lee. I'm a writer, and I'm collecting the stories of the women of the Minnesota Resistance. This particular story is special to me because I was there. I was on this same walk, and it was my very first resistance event. See, I'm an introvert, and I have highly sensitive hearing, so I don't like to leave my home that much because the world is a loud place, and I'm quite happy at home. During the surge, I wanted to hunker down and shelter in place. Like, COVID was good for me, and I wanted to go back to that snuggly little space. And I'd already had a couple of run-ins with ice, so I didn't want to risk more. But this event popped up, and it was different. And so here's Alice's story: the Silent Walk. The Silent Walk for Justice was hosted by Twin Cities Buddhist communities. All were welcome. It was on Sunday, February 8th, 2026, from 3 to 4:30. We were supposed to gather at Powderhorn Park West Playground. And it was a mindful walk in solidarity with those harmed by ice, to bear witness to all who had been harmed by the state violence. There would be no speeches. After we gather, we will walk to the sound of bells through neighborhoods to be fully present and to manifest compassion. As we walk, we invite you to rest your attention on your feet, on the ground, your breath, and the people and places around you and all that you see and hear. That was the announcement, and Alice answered. The handmaids are here. Alice didn't actually say those words, she just thought them as she elbowed her husband and pointed in the direction of 8 women dressed in heavy red cloaks and stark white bonnets. They stand in 2 lines of 4, perfect posture, heads forward, gloved red hands folded over their bellies. And what makes Alice shiver a bit is their red masks. This is a silent walk, and seeing their masks makes Alice somewhat mute, even though everyone around her is still speaking in low rumbles as they wait for the signal to start the walk. Even though it is a nice, warm, upper 20s winter day, Alice is chilled from the inside out. She wishes she'd worn more layers and her warmest winter coat. As she glances at the handmaids once again, trying not to stare, she feels a sort of ripping at the seams of her thoracic spine. Like a breeze is getting in underneath her shoulder blades and chilling her from the inside where she can't get warm. Alice recognizes the feeling as her unwelcome new friend, Grief, who had taken up residence in her weeks ago. I guess my silence starts now, she thinks. Grief had first arrived with the helicopters in early December. Because Alice lives close to this Minnesota state capitol, the helicopters were relentless during the surge. They flew low over her neighborhood, and Alice's heart decided to match their rhythm. She pressed her palm flat against the thumping behind her sternum, and she tried to breathe it down, but her heart had tuned itself to the rotors, and it wouldn't let go. At first, it just felt like anxiety and confusion with a dash of disbelief. But once Renee Good was killed, it was like all her emotions twirled around in a cloud of dust, in a flurry of a dark gray wizard's oak cloak revealing Grief as the master of ceremonies. So when she saw the handmaids, Grief crawled inside her ribcage, was pounding on the walls to be let out. Ahead of the handmaids, the clergy members and faith leaders gather. Pastors, ministers, rabbis, chaplains, dozens of them, wearing their stoles over their coats in greens and purples and carrying processional banners, the kind that would be carried into a church. So many different denominations. Are some of them the ones who kneeled on the pavement at MSP Airport that day? The cluster of volunteers wearing yellow reflective vests over their coats has started to spread themselves out amongst the crowd, guiding people with smiles and hand gestures to line up 2 by 2, like cars zipper merging from several lanes into 2. How many people are here? Must be over 1,000. Then the bells ring, and the low rumble of the crowd went silent. Alice's grandmother's bell was small and heavy, heavily patinaed. It had a loop just big enough to fit on her pinky finger to the first knuckle, where it dangled as she started walking. The clap of metal against metal rang with the natural swing of her arm, a steady pulse she could just feel as she walked. Grandma, I need you here with me now. Alice's husband walked beside her. It took a long time to move into their space in the line. She had a knot in her throat. It wasn't the I'm about to cry knot. It was more of a pressure from the unzipping feeling between her shoulder blades, pushing up through her neck. Grief, refusing to let go. Once out on the city streets, in the long, snaking line of walkers, Alice notices something she normally wouldn't notice in the city. Mainly, the signs. Sad signs. Old, worn-out ones. Brand new ones. Humorous ones. And stop you in the tracks signs. Love for Renee. It takes a village. Ice out. Give peace a chance. Pretty good. The pace for the walk was much slower than Alice's usual walking stride. Every couple of blocks, the line slowed to a stop because the front needed to wait for traffic before crossing a street. Reflective vest volunteers holding their arms out as patient drivers put their cars in park to let the long line proceed. 1,000 people in noble silence, stopping and starting like a pulse. At a moment when the line stalls, almost too still, Alice stopped on the street corner in front of a bus shelter, in front of two boys who didn't look to be a day over 15. But they were probably in their young 20s. They wore identical black ski caps pulled down over their eyebrows. Thick gaiter masks were pulled up over their noses and ears. The only skin showing was the whites of their eyes. They stared straight ahead, not at the walkers, but over them, noses up in a posture that said, "We know better than you, and we are better than you. You are stupid and beneath us." They wore identical heavy black winter coats and heavy black pants and boots, almost militaristic. Definitely a uniform. Is this what white Christian nationalists look like? One of them broke his stare and looked Alice right in the eye, almost like he'd heard her thinking and wanted her to know she was right. She smiled. She actually smiled, like her smile could do something to shift him. He narrowed his gaze for a moment, then quickly looked back up over her head. His nose went up slightly higher than before. Alice felt a shudder run through her body that she literally had to shake off by rattling her bell louder for that one moment. She went back to reading signs to block the vision of his ice blue eyes piercing into hers. "Ice agents, stop crashing grinder." Alice chuckled as she read the sign stapled up high on a telephone pole 3 or 4 times. I needed that. Whomever posted that there, thank you. As the line moved into a more residential area, the signs multiplied. Yard signs, window signs, garden flags. Every house had some kind of sign. Some were for the children of the Annunciation School, some for Ice Out, some for local political candidates, even a few Harris Walls leftovers. Some professionally done, but most were handmade. One on the front porch that reminded Alice of her own home had several simple black Sharpie on cardboard signs, one for each pane of glass. She didn't remember what any of them said except the one in the top left corner. How many weren't filmed? Her back unzipped some more, and that familiar breeze rushed through the back of her heart just as the line slowed to a stop right there. Alice stood staring at that sign, reading it and rereading it dozens of times in the minute or so they were still. The only thing that distracted her was the dog next door. A pit bull, peeking through the curtains of the picture window 2 houses up, wagging its tail, barked a happy bark. Alice watched her and hoped the dog would bark at her when she saw her, and then went back to reading the sign, again and again. Each time the dog barked, Alice looked at her. Each time the dog went quiet, Alice looked back at the sign. How many weren't filmed? How many are able to get back home? How many are gone forever? How many are still safe because of the whistles of the neighbors? Across the street, a tiny tiny hand pulled back the heavy drape just enough to reveal half of a child's face. Alice waved, and the tiny hand quickly closed the drapes. Then the front door to the house opened, and a young father stepped out, a toddler on his hip. He waved, squinting at the crowd like he hadn't seen daylight in days or weeks. The walkers kept moving, ringing their bells. Some waved back. They were only a few blocks from Renee Good's memorial now. 1 block away from the memorial site, a woman came out onto her front porch. It had been almost exactly 1 month since Renee's death, and this woman was crying, like big crying, verbal sobs as she thanked them over and over and over again. I love you guys. I just love you all so much. Thank you. Thank you. No one responded. But Alice was grateful she verbalized what 1,000 silent walkers were thinking. Alice felt her bell wanting to ring more and louder as they approached the memorial. But there wasn't time to stop and take in the everything of everything. They were a crowd of 1,000 walking in a line 2 by 2. They had to keep moving. So Alice breathed it all in quickly. The flowers, the photos, the messages, the candles, the stuffies, and the prayer flags. And then she stopped, holding up the people behind her. What stopped her was the firewood. A pile stacked 20 feet high next to a burning fire pit. A man sat in a lawn chair beside it, tending to a portable fire pit on his other side. That fire had been lit the day Renee died, and someone had tended it 24/7 ever since, for a full month. Does he live here? Renee's memorial was right in front of an apartment building, the same building where the man who filmed her death had been standing. Alice's heart reached toward the people inside, all of them, living with this on their front lawn. So many strangers coming and going from their home every day for a month. And someone, or many someones, keeping that fire going through sub-zero nights, winds, and blizzards. All those hearts, all that passion, all that pain, all that rage, so much emotion in that one small space. Alice stopped and time stood still for that moment in front of the fire because she suddenly felt warm. The fire reached past her coat and her skin and found the place where her thoracic spine had been ripped open for weeks, and it zipped her back up, sealing the scene. The fire's warmth of trees giving their life force in honor of the dead pushed grief's cold fingers away from the stitching and pressed everything back together from the inside. Alice's husband gently nudged her hand, ringing the bell, and she started walking again. That warmth lasted for the entire walk back to the park. Grief had taken her hand and helped her to swing it with more gusto. He wasn't inside her anymore, he was beside her, walking with her, swinging her hand the way you would a child on the way to the playground. If this story moved you or touched any of your feels, please do the thing and subscribe, like, or comment so that more people see this story and the many others that I share here. You can read the full text on my Substack at fiercelovemn.com. Thanks for giving a shit. I love you fiercely.